Hey, have you heard about Z?
𝐊𝐴𝐴𝐷𝐵
Easy.
Mobile banking.
Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances.
Amazing. Introducing the Digital Youth Account. NDBZ. NDBZ from NDB Bank. The future is banking on us.
Creamy richness redefined. Smooth, soft, spreadable. Introducing Ultra Soft Fondue with canola and sunflower oil.
We searched the world for the finest things for you. Things like sun-kissed European berries, rich chocolate from the world's best cocoa fields, and crisp cashews and fluffy marshmallows in a quirky Australian recipe.
𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐷𝐵, experience the world.
හැමදේම අතළඟ තියෙද්දි දුක් විඳින්නේ ඇයි?
Hey, have you heard about Z?
𝐊𝐴𝐴𝐷𝐵
Easy.
Mobile banking.
Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances.
Amazing. Introducing the Digital Youth Account. NDBZ. NDBZ from NDB Bank. The future is banking on us.
Creamy richness redefined. Smooth, soft, spreadable. Introducing Ultra Soft Fondue with canola and sunflower oil.
We searched the world for the finest things for you. Things like sun-kissed European berries, rich chocolate from the world's best cocoa fields, and crisp cashews and fluffy marshmallows in a quirky Australian recipe.
𝐊𝐴𝐷𝐵, experience the world.
History and legacy of nearly 8 decades. Schools, one from the hill country and other from Colombo. Schools playing for two completely different missions. Two schools with completely different missions on hand. One, trying to break a record. They've held the Shield since 2017 for nearly 5 consecutive years. And Trinity College, on the other hand, are trying to make sure the longest streak remains with Trinity. This week, we saw Jurassic Park fall silent for the second time this year. Game with only a 1-point difference, 16-17. Match filled with exciting moments. Match that kept us at the edge of our seats for 70 minutes long. It was just one drop goal that got Trinity across the board, 16-17. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this very, very special episode of the Rugby Show, brought to you by Quadrangle magazine. And of course, today we are here to discuss everything that is to be spoken about the Bradby Shield. And by us, as always, is the statspert, all the way from New Zealand, Boa Athu. And we are joined once again out of the field. We have my good co-host, Bassa 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿 𝐵𝑎𝑠. But before I hand it over to 𝐿𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿, of you have had the honor and privilege of representing your schools at the Bradby Shield. Give us, the audience members, slight insight to what it feels like to play for this all-important fixture. We'll start off with you.
Yes, good morning, afternoon, and evening, wherever you may be. Well. What did I say last week? Drop goal. Shan Altaf, son, you and I will claim ourselves as geniuses. I mean, it was almost like we planned it. And what an outstanding strike that was. So congratulations, first and foremost, to the Trinity Lions. I think outstanding work. Jurassic Park has been cracked yet again. And we got our prediction bang on the money as well. So when we get things right, it's time to brag a little. So, yeah, well done to everyone. If you followed us, you've done well. And of course, Trinity, absolutely cock a hoop. Answer your question. Me personally playing for Royal, I've had a number of Bradbys. My last one was 1998. Last game was at 𝐊𝐵𝐿𝐴𝐵𝐿𝐿. One of the most incredible experiences I have ever had. I mean, I've been involved in rugby here in New Zealand pretty much all my adult life. But for me personally, the most satisfying experience outside of winning an Auckland Club Premiership as a coach was to win the Bradby Shield in my very last year. That was 1998. And of course, involved in one of the most epic Bradby Shield games in the second leg. In 1997, Royal won that game 18 points to 11, but we lost the Shield by 1 point. In fact, we had 1.5 hands on that Shield. But the very last moment, guess who gave that a penalty away dead center? It was me, hands in the ruck. And the skipper of Trinity, Nuan Fernando, that man's got ice in his veins. He kicks a 50-meter penalty goal for Trinity to clinch the Bradby Shield on aggregate. So incredible moments, but no, it was one of the, for me, one of the greatest moments in my life, which I will take to the grave.
What about you?
All right, Shireen. First of all, hello everyone. Yes, I've been missing in action for a couple of days, couple of weeks also. But it's really nice to be back, especially this Bradby segment. And like Shireen said, there is nothing like the Bradby two excitement-filled game. One in Colombo, one in Candy. What's more to ask? And this week, I couldn't be happier myself because, the Shield is, we at least have one hand on the Shield is what the Trinitians would say. But as a player who has been involved in a few games of the Bradby Shield, the atmosphere is very different. Although I haven't been privileged enough to win the Bradby Shield back in 2022, yes, it was a surprise, the runaway victory for Royal at the complex, but to come back home and to fight back and win that second leg, that was still a big star on our hats. And last year, yet again, another super performance in the first leg. And Royal comes back very, very strongly. So what I take away from the Bradby is that it's not over until it's really, really over. And that's the beauty of the game. That's how the Bradby has gotten its reputation, like Boa said. It can all change because no matter if you win the first leg by a big margin and lose the second leg, you can still walk away with the Bradby. But all in all, I think it's the blue ribbon of school sport or even sport as a whole in the country. So to be a part of such a big game is in itself a big privilege. And to walk away, winners or losers, at the end of the day, you're part of a bigger picture. And that's what I've been really privileged about. And I'm more excited as a spectator now to watch it from the stands. I watched it with Shalin, the first leg itself, and we had a big fun time. So, backing up the Trinity boys, but also I know the Royalists will come back all guns blazing because they don't want Bradby Shield to come back to Kandy. But let's see. We're hoping for a very, very good game. Let's look at how the games went on, and let's look at how the Bradby Shield first leg panned off, and what we look forward to in the second leg of the Bradby Shield.
Jagit, I think you, man, who has all the questions for Boa today, can transition from player to media personality. I think it's going to be an interesting task for you, and I'm definitely excited to see what the questions you have in hand. Subasa, over to you, buddy.
All right, thank you, Shubin. Sure, it's definitely a very different experience to have played last year or played before, and to come back to ask questions about what the game was this year. Obviously, a bit of nerves when you go to a game because you've been in that position of a player, the pressure, all that excitement, and now you're just sitting and you can do absolutely nothing. I feel like Boa also might have the exact same experience. But Boa, let's talk about how Royal and Trinity, since it's the end of the regular season of the Schools Rugby League, what do you think Trinity and Royal did right and wrong throughout the season? Especially they had what could be named as a trial run, which is very, very rare before a Bradby Shield. Usually you play Royal 2 times in a season. But this is the second time in 3 years that Royal and Trinity meet in the league, which is not considered Bradby. So what do you think? How did that game pan out? What are your general thoughts on Royal and Trinity this season?
For me, it was, like you said, it was a bit of an unusual sort of affair. What really struck out for me was that in that game, particularly in the first half, Royal, as we know, have always had issues starting. They've always been a second half and more or less a fourth quarter team. That's when they really peak and they come home with a wet sail, so to speak. But in this game, obviously they put a little bit of thought into this and they addressed their first half woes. And of course, 22-0. And anyone looking at the score at halftime would have thought, look, Trinity are in for an absolute toweling. And, they may have even thought, look, Royal's probably going to put 35, 40 points on Trinity. But that, of course, didn't happen. Trinity came back and almost snatched the rug from right underneath the Royal Tuskers' feet, 22 points to 19. So for me, looking at the video and just looking at key patterns and the form line, I felt Trinity really finished that game more so psychologically on an absolute high. And I think they took that same mindset into the first leg, and they're very combative, very prepared to be physical against a very physical Royal side, because traditionally, as you know, Royal bring the physicality, they bring the pain, what I call the sandpaper. But Trinity matched them up front. And I think that's primarily because in that pre-Bradby game, that last 15 minutes, I felt Trinity really won the collision. They dominated the contact area. And that just dented Royal's confidence just a little bit, And of course, if you look at the form line right throughout the second half of the season, Trinity have been on an upward trajectory, whereas I feel Royal, particularly after that Vidyartha game, where I thought they played very smart right up till that last 8-9 minutes before they let things slip. Thereon, they've just dropped their very high standards, and they haven't been as clinical and accurate as their potential suggests. So for me, I think that pre-Bradby game, particularly the last 10-15 minutes, Trinity really started growing arm and a leg. And clearly they brought that into the first leg. And here we are. They've won. And I have to say, Royal extremely fortunate that they only lost by 1 point. And I think Trinity will be absolutely kicking themselves. They probably had 4, maybe 5 chances to add some more points. They should have won at least by 15 to 20 points, the way I see it, if they were clinical. But all to play for, and we're almost even Stevens going into the second leg.
Absolutely, boy. In my personal opinion, it's actually a new. The second leg, who wins the second leg is where it's actually going to be decided. Where, unlike other years where Royal actually carried the lead, or like last year, Trinity carried not a big significant lead, but still a 3-point margin up front into the second leg. It's going to be very exciting to see. But one thing that we saw in particular is that both teams have been having a very rocky ride coming into the season, because Trinity losing to 𝐶𝑠 and DS up front in the season, very close calls, very great games of rugby, whereas Royal going up against St. Peter's and then the 𝐶𝑠 game, and a close call against St. Joseph. They've also had their fair share of controversy, to close calls, to unfortunate calls. So in terms of the trajectory that both teams had, you can't call it perfect. More so, the red card that was awarded to the jumper from Royal College, 𝐿𝐴𝐴, and as well as the injury, the unfortunate injury that the Trinity and skipper had to go through, ruling him out of what potentially could have been his final few games after 3 years of playing in the red, gold, and blue jersey. So it's not the perfect ideal scenario that both teams would have expected to definitely see in the Bradby. So with that sort of a context behind them, I think the game of rugby they played surely should make both of the teams extremely proud. But let's look at what actually went down in the Bradby first leg and see what the positives are and the negatives are up front. And, now that Boa and I are still spectators, we can become those uncles who make comments about the game. So let's make our comments about what we have about the game, what we can look forward to within the game. So, Boa, I think one of the most influential and most interesting things that we saw in this game was not by the players, but the three men who control the game, 𝐤𝐿𝐴𝐴, and then the assistant referee being shared by a Royalist and a Trinitian, which is a very rare occurrence. Mr. 𝐂𝐴𝐴𝐵 and Mr. Jamaldeen taking on the duties. What do you think about this lineup? How do you see the officiating going about? What do you feel about? How do you think they contributed to the quality of the game?
I thought it was outstanding. The quality of the game was fantastic. There was a lot of flow to it. Look, let me be very clear. This whole thing about refereeing and what's happened, it's been well documented. There's been lots of controversies. There's been lots of dramas. It's been a whistle fest. It's been a card fest for every innocuous knock. If you sneeze the wrong way, there's a yellow card. So, the rugby public were getting a little bit sick and tired of this. So, it's in one hand, it's unfortunate that the local referees, because obviously the Bradby is the blue ribbon event, and any referee worth their salt will want to add a Bradby Shield to their resume. But given that there was a deep climate of mistrust with the local referees, both Trinity and Royal, who happened to have copped some shocking decisions right throughout the season, they made the right call. And given that this was outside the season proper or league window, they could make the call. And of course, the funds, the resources were there. And there was just far too much hard work which would have gone into this campaign to be put at stake. So it was the right thing to do. And of course, it was a breath of fresh air, because by getting a complete outsider to referee this, that whole element of perceived bias is removed. Yeah. And of course, getting an old royalist in young Mr. Jamaldeen, who, by the way, is a very good referee in his own right. And of course, a former Trinitian, Clement Isaac, who, referees at a very high level, where he's domiciled in the UAE. So I think they did an outstanding job. It really contributed to the spectacle. I think outside the rugby fraternity, even in the general public, because Bradby's a big, such a big deal. I would go as far as local rugby is concerned, it's bigger than Ben-Hur. So there was this real hype about this, and of course you saw how Jaco de Wit loved the game to flow. Now, I also have to say this: I am yet to come across the perfect referee. We're never going to come across that. Okay, we saw in the previous Rugby World Cup final, there were 2 or 3 absolute howlers. So that's always going to be there because this is a human game, and I hope it always remains a human game. So with the human dynamic, you're always going to get that. But the reality is, with the very minor things, and given that rugby is a contact sport, you've got to use a little bit of common sense. Case and point being, if you look at any test match, okay, and if you look at the rucks, technically, 95% of those rucks should be penalized because most players, they don't support their own body weight. But given the way the game has evolved and how the contact area, eventuates and evolves, you're always going to find that. So you got to apply a little bit of common sense. So that's what I saw on Saturday. So 99.9% of everyone involved and watching the game are happy. The only people who aren't happy, I hear, are the local referees themselves, which is really unfortunate. I personally think this should have been a great learning opportunity for all of them, So, yeah, so well done to both Royal and Trinity for taking the initiative. And I think the feedback by and large has been outstanding as well. I certainly enjoyed the game. Like I said, of course, there's always going to be a few things. There's one foot trip. I thought that could have been carded, but again, the referee used his, he used a little bit of brains. He used his rugby intelligence, how he warned the players. There's one high tackle early in the game, rather than go to the pocket, call the captain and said, "Look, keep it down." And so, to me, that's fantastic. It's a contact sport. We have to treat it as such, and we can't be carding every contact and being as technical as you're supposed to, because all it will do is just completely ruin the game, and every other moment there'll be a whistle. So I hope that's a comprehensive enough answer for everyone listening, because I had a lot of questions this week about this. So hopefully for the second leg, we see an overseas ref as well.
Absolutely, Boa. I think the feedback has been wonderful for the three men in charge, especially taking up a game amidst all of the heated topics around refereeing in the country. There was a huge amount of pressure, even though they were not actively involved in the local rugby circuit. The pressure on them was absolutely immense because they were change makers in the system. But also, every dark spot is shunned upon by a bright light. Great news coming in from Sri Lanka rugby fraternity. Prolific ref 𝐂𝐿𝐴 has been selected to officiate at the Asian Rugby Sevens circuit in South Korea. So, positives also come about, and we congratulate Mr. 𝐴𝐿𝐴 for his wonderful achievement. And like you said, Boa, it's a great opportunity for the local refs, people who aspire to become refs, right, referees of this game, to officiate and take charge of this game. It was a beautiful example of how at certain times you let the boys play and you make the right call, as opposed to you not letting the boys play and you get them to play the way you want them to play. So there's a clear difference in how you approach the game. Let's now listen to what Jaco de Wit, the referee for the first leg of the Bradby Shield, had to say after his wonderful game at the Royal Sports Complex.
There we go. There's a video feed.
Competing at the first leg of the 78th Bradby Shield.
It was an excellent experience. I'm really lucky to be part of it. Blessed in a way. Boys played an excellent game of rugby and was not afraid to run the ball. It's very good to see at this level.
Are you in a position to give a statement in terms of Sri Lanka schools rugby? Yeah, it's just a one match, but it's a rule-book part of Sri Lanka played for 78 years. Your thoughts on the two teams and the standard of rugby?
They definitely want to play rugby. They definitely want to run. There's very good boys playing there. A lot of talent. And I really hope Sri Lanka look after these boys because there's definitely talent in the future.
Great. Your thoughts on Sri Lanka, the condition, Indian condition for you coming from UAE. How did you adjust yourself? Just landed overnight, referee, and then going back again. Your thoughts on that?
It's never easy just coming the night before. Next time I'll definitely come a little bit longer. It's an amazing place. Obviously the humidity gets you because we only get this humidity when the sun goes down. But it was wonderful, you know. It was excellent to be part of this. And yeah, excellent atmosphere as well.
Any message for the rugby fans and the rugby school boys?
Well, everybody in Sri Lanka really needs to stand together and support these boys and support rugby as a whole to take rugby forward. We need to see more rugby in Sri Lanka. We've got so many great facilities with the technology that you have here with the cameras and all of that. And you need to make use of that and take that further. So all the best for the future.
Thank you, Jacob.
All right, that was your referee for the first leg of the 78th Bradby Shield encounter, 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿 and his comment on what the game looked like. Moving on from the officiating duties, let's now look at what the 30 men on the field had to showcase to themselves for this game. In my honest opinion, my first Bradby as a past player, the excitement and everything that I got to experience was something that I could only experience from the stands. And I think Boa himself has experienced it maybe 20, 30 times now. But looking at how both teams actually approached this game, it built up a lot of excitement for the fans, and certain things that both teams did, certain spectacular moves that both teams had in their pockets were simply outstanding. And I think they deserve a big shout out within this show. So let's move on to a few key points of this game. Boa. Trinity opens their scoring with a cross kick. 𝐶𝐶𝐿𝐴 kicks it beautifully to 𝗏𝗏 on the wing. Did you see that coming by any chance?
Yeah, 100%. Because the week before on the preview, I did mention that Trinity are very strong on that right-hand edge. They anchor on that right-hand edge in the opposition 22 off a set piece. And the Royal left edge, their winger, a bit suspect in defense. So I think, obviously Altaf has the skill set with his kicking out a hand. And he's very confident. And obviously, we saw there was an advantage by referee 𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏. And Altaf nailed it. He got it straight on a �2 rupee coin. And now there's a little bit of chatter around, which I will address now. This is a great segue about potential aerial challenge. Look, I'm pleased that, no nonsensical penalties, penalty tries, or yellow cards were given, because obviously the Trinity winger, Raizan, as he went up, there was in fact an aerial challenge. But if you actually look at the footage, open your eyes and exercise your brain a little bit. Some of these people who've been arguing for penalty tries and other nonsensical rubbish like that, it was actually the Trinity winger himself who propelled himself forward to score the try. So a try was scored, no harm done. And like I said, end of the day, it's a contact sport. So I'm pleased sanity prevailed, and it didn't, put a dampener on what was an outstanding bit of innovation and variation in attack. So brilliant work by Trinity. As I said, not one bit surprised, because I've always been going on about Trinity, how they anchor off that right edge. That's their landmark. Now, I use the word landmark a lot. It's where they feel they can best launch. They identify the area, they identify where they're going to attack. And one other thing, before we move on from the refereeing, one of the quotes of the year, one of the quotes of the season from referee 𝐊𝐴 was, "This is not American football." And the reason that happened was because our boys are not actually used to this continuity, because there's all these, breaks, people running in, medics running in, water breaks. I think it was taking a little bit of toll on both teams. And 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿, he's obviously refereeing at a much higher level at senior age grade. It was a walk in the park for him. So there's a bit of learnings there to be had. So hopefully both teams do a little bit of extra conditioning when they come into the second leg. They're ready to go as well. So not one bit surprised about that cross kick. Trinity, in fact, one of the most creative and, to me, one of the most innovative teams this season, scoring what was one of the most spectacular tries. So well done to them.
Indeed, Boa, to hold your nerve to do that in arguably one of your biggest games in your career. Yeah. Kudos to Shan Altaf, kudos to the Trinitians to actively make that decision. And so, if you feel right and if the circumstances feel right, you should go for it. And that was the perfect example. And I think that added a bit of color to this year's Bradby as well. To start off with on such an exciting note, I think it's sort of bamboozled the Royalists as well. We could see that the Royal crowd had a big gasp and eyes were out of their lid and they couldn't believe what happened. But obviously, Royal, they didn't stay shut. They immediately came back and they scored a brilliant try as well. What do you think about Royal's approach to becoming a trailing team? And how do you think Royal's approach that game from there onwards? They came back to score. But what do you think about that approach back into the game, Boa, after that initial blow of a lead?
Yeah, look, Royal are like a good racehorse. They like to chase something. They like to chase the game. And that's why in that pre-Bradby game, when they got that 22-0 lead in the first half, it went against the grain and the existing pattern of the form line. So I think Royal will be comfortable chasing. So that's one positive for them, given that they're only 1 point in areas. However, going back to this cross kick, and also we'll talk about it later on, which is the drop goal, Trinity are very good at varying their attack. Whereas with Royal, they are one of the most predictable attacks, in this competition, have been for so many years now. Because when I look at video footage and when I analyze things, I know exactly what Royal are going to do. And if you look at Trinity's defensive effort, they knew exactly what Royal were going to do in attack. They just out-carry. There's not much creativity around, wanting to play on top. Whereas I feel that a team like Royal should be doing more pick and goes, looking to penetrate closer to the ruck, being very direct, being very abrasive, being very physical, and then look for offloads. Whereas the attack, even if you watched how they played against Isipatana and St. Peter's, the other top three teams, they out carry, they carry towards the touchline, and all the defense has to do is just kind of drift with them because there's not much innovation and creativity around it. Now, unless they carry really hard and start busting the gain line, nothing much is going to come out of it. So I think Trinity backed themselves, and they were comfortable actually allowing Royal to do that. So that's a bit of a psychological advantage for Trinity because not many teams are comfortable playing a team like Royal without ball in hand, i.e. defending, So to keep Royal under 20 points at Jurassic Park and beat them by 1 point, and I thought Trinity left so many points on the field. There were at least 2 penalties which they could have taken, and I keep talking about this. Take the points all the time. Take the points because they come at a premium, So it's a case of, I think, Royal just need to be a little bit more varied and bring some of the innovation of their own, which I'm hoping is going to be the case. And as far as Trinity goes, for me, it's like eating scrambled egg in the morning, It's just, you don't know where the attacks are going to come from. And that's the beauty about dealing with the team. In fact, a couple of days back, I was at the Blues headquarters here, talking and doing an assessment with one of their analysts, and I looked at a lot of their attack shapes. It's exactly what I'm talking about, the unpredictability. And that's, I think, where Trinity have the edge. If they can take this and do something a little bit more extra at the Lions' Den, then I have no doubt that the Shield is coming back home to Kandy. However, if Royal can counter this and get their bread and butter movements, like, for example, the driving maul, be very abrasive up front and really smash the Trinity forwards up front, then watch out. Royal might actually put some points on the board. But at the moment, they're just really lacking confidence in that department. And speaking of confidence, the Trinity Lions have bucket loads of it.
Now, that's one interesting perspective, Boa. Now, when you said the Shield is coming home, it doesn't make anyone more happier than Shereen and myself and all the Trinitians tuned up. But we also have to understand that it's a 1-point lead. Royal have caught up with many more points of a lead. So Royal is a dark horse in this game. And at no point can we count this game closed or even halfway done. But in terms of signature moves, now that we are in the conversation, what do you think the Royal Mall is Royal Rolling Mall is the same as it was 2 to 3 years ago? What's your opinion on that?
Short answer, no. The reason is because they've shifted into this lateral attack where they're looking at the out carry. From a preparation point of view, they've obviously sacrificed some of that time which they would otherwise spend on the driving mall. Now, I know this all too well as a coach because, time comes at a premium. So when you plan your training schedules, you've obviously got to sacrifice something in order to gain somewhere else. So this is obviously what they've done. But the reality is with this out carry game, if you don't necessarily have the skill set where you don't have players out wide who can bust the gain line, you don't actually make any net gain. All you're doing is moving side to side. Now, if you go back and look at the footage in the first leg, that's pretty much what happened when they kind of went from side to side and then they looked for either a contestable kick and then they gave it away, or there was a knock-on, a turnover, something like that. And of course, Royal's other issue is their on-field discipline is absolutely terrible. There were a number of instances where the referee clearly told their chaser, who was in front of the ball, the kicker, to hold his line and stay back, but they just didn't listen. So there were some, really clumsy penalties. So what Royal actually need to do is go back to what they do really well and just focus on that. Be very, very clinical whenever they get the ball. Also, what's really going for Royal is that they've now shown a willingness to take the points. Idris Farooq kept them in the game. It's as simple as that. So they've got that area well and truly sorted. It's just that they're not as clinical as they should be. If they turn up at the Lions' Den, being very clinical, get that initial drive on the driving maul going, then it's a different beast. All of a sudden, Trinity could be 15, 20 points behind and them chasing the game. Then it's a whole different ball game. The other aspect around the maul is, of course, now there's a lot of chatter about the maul being refereed or under-refereed. All I can say is, in the last, I think it was the 63rd minute or something, Royal went for a driving maul and it didn't quite go the way, and Trinity kind of, what they've done was they attacked the ball carrier at the front and they used this pull technique. They pulled the maul to the left-hand side, infield, and then they wheeled around and they just pretty much drove Royal to the ground. Therefore, Royal couldn't release the ball. It was a turnover. One thing I do have to say is, of course, Jaco de Wit was very, very precise and quick to call the use or lose on the maul, but that was purely from a safety point of view. So particularly at this age grade, that has to be done. So long as there's consistency and, we see the driving maul being policed as well as defended by Trinity in that exact same manner, then they have every chance to nullify it. However, if Royal get that initial shunt going and they really get on top of Trinity, then it's curtains. So it's an interesting battle, and I think Royal will be really working on this week. And I know they're listening to this right now. They've probably got full blast speakers going on as well. So really focus on this. Get clinical. Once you get that initial driving maul and the ball goes to the fishtail right at the back. So the reason I call it a fishtail is, how a fish swims and the ball sits at the tail. It's very difficult to defend, but you've got to get this right. You've got to get it right.
Indeed, Boa. Moving on to Trinity's point of view. Like you said, Trinity left a lot of points on the ground. What do you think about certain decisions that Trinity made, and how exactly should they approach certain penalties in a critical moment like that? Because I'm pretty sure the 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐴𝐿𝐴 is not going to be about 20 or 30 points wide open in an absolute best case. It's at best going to be under a margin of 7 or so. In that sort of a situation, what does Trinity do? What should Trinity be going for? Like you said, your mantra is always go for the points, but in an absolute desperate case, what should Trinity be looking at?
Yeah, so first option is take the points, no question. Always take the points. ATP, always take the points. That's what I keep saying. When I coach, I have a headset like this. I have my water carriers and medic. When I say ATP, they know exactly what to do. The T goes out, take the points. And I have a gun kicker. So Trinity have a gun kicker in Shan Altaf, right? Now, if the only time you have the exception to this rule is when you really know and sense you've got the opposition on the absolute rack. If they've conceded penalty after penalty and they look like they're going to fold like a deck chair, then you go for the kill. But again, if you know your absolute weapon is to kick for goal, because you have to understand, once you call the shot, on average, it takes about 60 seconds out of the clock. So that's 60 seconds lesser to play. So you've got to apply a little bit of logic, okay? Build scoreboard pressure and play this like a grand final. Winner takes all. Because Trinity have won. They are 1 point ahead. Royal are 1 point in areas. For Royal to retain the shield, they don't have to win this. They just need a draw. By virtue of the draw, they get there. Okay? So this is where the points really, really matter. And if you look at Royal, what kept them in the game was taking the points. Had they not taken the points, it would have been a very different story. And Trinity, they had two very kickable options, which I thought they should have gone for it. And when they failed, and when they got another penalty after that, what did they do? They took the points. So it sort of vindicates this whole line of thinking. So for me, it's an absolute no-brainer. Always take the points, okay? Always take the points. And now, here's the other kicker. Now, I did say, Shan, Altaf, if you can kick a drop goal, thank you, son. You made me look like an absolute genius. The amount of messages I got in and around that. Oh, here's another opportunity, okay? Put pressure. Look for that goal line dropout, the kick receive. And Royal will always kick into that left-hand pocket. Altaf will sit in the center. It's another open shot, clear shot. So take those 3-pointers. I am a huge fan of it. I have won 2 titles back to back here in in New Zealand's most competitive club competition, and we did that by kicking goals. Okay, so it works. If you go back to last year's Rugby World Cup 2023, came down to kicking goals. So when it comes to these really tight contests, respect what's in front, respect the opposition, and play smart footy. So let me say it again, and I know I'm sounding like a broken record. Always take the points. And whoever goes on to win the Bradby Shield, you can thank me later, because I can see how this is going to happen. It will come down to penalties. It might even come down to a last-minute kick at goal. So there you go.
Indeed, bro. I think every 17-year-old wants to be in 𝐷𝐿𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻's shoes. 2 years, 2 highlight reels back to back of putting your team in the lead. I think even on field, no, off field, that's the sort of atmosphere that you want to be in. So kudos to him, and kudos to the Trinitians for making it an absolute cracker of a game, and for lighting a bit of hope for the Trinitians. But the Royalists, we all know that you all are working very, very hard because what you claim for 10 years, you all won't let go in your 11th year. I know for sure. And
sorry to interrupt. Just the other thing I want to tell you is
I've been living under the cave for a long time. Yes.
Yeah, just sorry to interrupt, Basaf. Just between that, the halfway and the 22, once Trinity get into the Royal half, I think where they really need to focus on is just before the Royal 22, because the way I see it, they have a tendency, it's not just them, most teams have a tendency to not defend that area as much as they would defend their own goal line. So for me, that's where the opportunity comes in. So put a lot of pressure, force a turnover, force a mistake, force the penalty, and then take the points. So treat the opposition 22 as if it was a goal line and convert those 3 points. And this is a philosophy I have personally used, and I've learned from some of the best in the business. And guess what? It works. So if both teams are listening, take notes. You know, you can thank me later, and I'll write out an invoice. And you're very welcome.
Now, this is exactly why you should be watching the Rugby Show, because who else in the country gives out free rugby tips like Boa, and none other than on the Rugby Show with Boa Athu. So let's keep up the excitement, and that's the end of the agenda on my part. I'll now hand it over to 𝐶𝐿𝐴, who has been carrying the Rugby Show for quite some time without me, to carry on with the rest of the show. Thank you very much, guys, and I'll see you in Candy at the second leg of the 78th Bradby Shield encounter.
Thank you, Basa.
Thank you, Basa. It's good having you back, finally. I'm not alone on this show. Good having you back, buddy. Before we move on to what we can expect week at the Lions Den in Pallekele, a quick look and remind us what happened last weekend at the Royal Park when Trinity College Kandy beat College in the first leg of the Bradby 16 to 17 points. These are the highlights.
Trinity College for the 78th Bradby Shield encounter here at the Royal Complex.
Proudly bringing the shield.
Jaco Dewitt will be the man in charge.
Jamaldin, he has the unique distinction of having refereed.
But he somehow manages to make a couple of yards, but the referee says
on the Trinitians, and then the retreating players did not go behind the line. It was 𝐕𝐴 with his conversion.
All away. Some good hands by Yasuru 𝐷𝐿𝐴 on that occasion. 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻 spots the opportunity, but straight away
to try and equalize. Has no problem.
Instructions. 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻 goes for the cross kick. Does he have the winger coming in? He does, and that's the first try for Trinity College. Hands there by Shyam, but the ball has squirted out from that ruck.
Hands on the ground, then grab.
However,
Get up. The beneficiary of that should be Idris Farooq.
Yes.
Who strikes it well.
As Royal College now with front football, and as they've gone through, yes, they have a good advantage coming because the tackler rolled a bit too slow. With no advantage, the referee is compelled to go back. Crowd tries to put him off, but 𝐷𝐿𝐻𝐿𝐻 makes no mistake. As here goes the big prop forward, trying to beat a couple of men, but this time around isolated and the Trinity College arrive in player.
A little bit of jeering, normally not present at the Bradby. As 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿 has no problem.
Have they managed to get this down? No, they haven't. But the ball has been held up in goal.
So Farooq with the goal line dropout. Doesn't find much distance. Altaf with a drop goal attempt.
By the looks of it, it's good. Gay takes it and an advantage is coming for Royal College. Cross kick comes but not with the best of chasers. And Steven, the skipper.
Offside.
It is Farooq. By the looks of it, he has pierced the posts. The home team with possession. Nothing really on as the ball has been kicked by Yuan. And bit of an anti-climax, but 𝐊𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 kicks the ball out. Scoreboard as well, it's just a solitary point thanks to the boot of.
Were the highlights from last weekend when Trinity College Kandy beat Royal College in the first leg of the Bradby Shield encounter. Oh, we saw Trinity come very, very close to get some eyes on the board, but they just couldn't convert those into actual points. What do you think these 2 weeks, what do you think they're talking about these 2 weeks, and how do you think these 2 weeks will help them get something across the board?
I think, look, it comes down to option taking, really. There was a number of instances where Trinity broke the gain line. And look, the concern for Royal, and I hope they're working on this last week and next week, is their gain line was broken relatively easy. Trinity got through that initial defense relatively easy. It's just that when they came closer to the try line, then Royal really ramped it up. So that's why in my previous little spiel, I said it's just that halfway to the 22. It's what I call the 40 to 22 game. In that area, I just felt that, Royal just gave up their gain line far too easily. As far as Trinity goes, they just need to focus on quick ruck recycle. Once they get into a situation where they bust the gain line and they start recycling the ball, they don't want to slow it down and allow Royal to settle in to that defensive pattern, which they're very good at. Now, if you do that, they'll keep tackling you all day, every day until they force a turnover. In fact, one of the most critical points was when Trinity, the number 8, their skipper, he makes a break, and there was a great bust. And, I felt had they got, quick ruck recycle, or had they offloaded to the shoulder on the right hand, Trinity would have been under the post, or they would have shifted it wide. But instead, they were a bit slow around the ruck. They allowed Royal to reset, and they just kept going. And true enough, it was held up, and it was a goal line dropout. And of course, then we had 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 with that drop goal. But what could have potentially been 7 points was missed. So there's a few instances like that. So as far as Trinity go, play to their strength, which is shifting that ball. And as I said, Royal's soft underbelly is that left edge. It is that left edge, and I see a question on the chat, which I'll use this as a segue from 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 Yusuf, big fan of the show. He's talking about the cross kick and the outstanding bit of work. And will they use that in Absolutely. I think so. I think they've found where the weakness is. It's what I call Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo is, where's the weakness? So Royal's Nemo is that left edge. Yep. So I think they'll probably look to shift most of their lateral attack from right to left, use that anchor or use that landmark on that right edge and shift it very quickly and look to pepper that left edge. So Royal need to be prepared for this. And given that they're listening to this, I'm sure they will be. So let's look forward to a very interesting second leg at the Lions' Den.
So now this next question is more of a two-part question, and it's about the man. Stop. 𝐷𝐿𝐷𝐿𝐷 scoring nearly 12 out of the 17 points that Trinity scored last weekend. The first question, is how instrumental is 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 going to be if he wants to get across the board and finally end the streak? The second part is, I'm sure when you perform like that in your own backyard, you are going to get a target on your back. I'm sure Royal is going to target 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 this weekend. So what do you think is going to happen this coming weekend?
Okay, so let me start by saying this. 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 is going to be arguably the most instrumental and most influential in the second leg. And if not, it'll come down to deciding who takes a shield home. Okay? And the reason is, in my view, I've done the numbers, I've looked at the analysis. If 𝐿𝐴𝐵 can kick 4 penalties in the second leg, Trinity will win the 78th Bradby Shield. You can write that down. Okay, I'll say it again. If 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 kicks 4 penalties in the second leg, Trinity will be winning the Bradby Shield. You can write that down. Okay. Number 2, will Royal be targeting? Oh yeah, absolutely. Now, I've on a number of occasions I have said Royal need to target that 10-12 channel, particularly after from their set piece. But they haven't done that because they've moved into this game where they want to play this out carry, which doesn't really suit them. Okay, so it's a no-brainer. Obviously, in most teams around the world, doesn't matter what the level is, in defense, teams try to hide their first 5. The reason is, if the first 5 or the fly half, standoff, whatever you want to call it, is your game driver, you want to try and protect your first 5 as much as you can. So it makes perfect sense. So in this instance, put pressure on that 10-12 channel. Now, I'm saying this not because it's 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 for XYZ. It just stays universal at any level of rugby. It just makes perfect sense. Put pressure on that 10-12 channel, and see how they respond. So I think that's something Royal will need to do. And the rest of the Trinity team, from a tactical point of view, the reality is that you've got 1 point. You're in the lead. You want to try and play more footy with the ball, more attacking rugby. So that brings 𝐁𝐿𝐴𝐵 right into the equation. Whereas with Royal, they don't necessarily have an X-factor player who is a game driver. It's more, more holistic 15-man approach, and they, use that physicality. But again, it's got to be the strategy on the day. What is your game plan? So as far as Trinity goes, it's undeniable. 𝐿𝐴𝐵 is going to be a key figure. But this boy, he's got the skill set. So if you give him space and time, he's going to kill you, as we saw with the first leg. And, of course, the key factor is Royal's on-field discipline. They can't be giving these silly, clumsy penalties. If they do, I'll go back to what I said first. 𝐿𝐴𝐵 will probably kick 4, maybe more penalties. And if that's the case, you know what the outcome is going to be.
So now, this question goes to both teams. In this season, we've been used to a very specific type of rugby. We heard the whistle being blown every 5-10 minutes, but that was not the case this past weekend. And I'm pretty sure 7th of September, the same thing is going to happen. They're going to have to get used to a different type of rugby, long, continuous stretches of non-stop rugby. How do you think the coaches are going to approach this? Because we saw towards the latter part of the match, both teams are starting to lack a little bit. So how do you think both coaches can approach this question?
So hopefully this week they would have done some drills and skills around the whole continuity, one more phase. And of course, how you manage your bench or your impact off the bench. I'll give you an example. Last year in the Auckland Club Premiership final here, with my game day 23, I was very specific with the rest of my coaching staff, with players. They were allocated certain minutes, and we were very clear to them saying, look, you're going to play for 50 minutes, 60 minutes. We had some players who played 45, 46 minutes. And we gave them very specific instructions saying, empty the tank. Don't hold anything back. You will play X amount of minutes. You play that. And we have reinforcements coming in. And that was a very tactical choice in how we managed. And the end result, when exactly as we wanted and exactly as how we predicted. So I think there needs to be a lot of emphasis on that. Keep it really simple. So hopefully they've done a bit of conditioning. And this week coming up, it's all about making sure you get your execution right. Okay. And the reality is, if you get your execution right, you're not going to spend as much energy as you would otherwise, because you continually get that momentum and you're not giving away silly penalties. Because as soon as you give penalties, chances are, if it's in the opposite, if it's in the opposition half, they will opt to kick out and exit of their own half. So once you do that, it just means that you're going backwards, and then you might, there's a very good possibility that off a line out or whatever it is, you're going to be defending for a fair amount of time. So that takes energy. So that is the part both teams need to look at. Go back and have a look at the video, which I'm sure they have. Given that, teams like Trinity have very advanced drone-capable analysis software as well, which is, was brilliant, by the way. So use all these tools, understand, where things didn't quite go right, where your work-ons are, and then come up with a strategy which is very specific to that. But as you rightly pointed out, given that we have an overseas official, or we had an overseas official, and we will be having another overseas official, they will encourage continuity of the game and let the game flow. So both teams need to be prepared for this. And for most of these players, particularly senior players leaving, this will be their last hurrah, last 70 minutes. So just empty the tank. Don't leave anything. I come back to what I always say, make great memories. So empty the tank, just leave it all on the field. And I think this is going to be one epic game. I can't wait. So excited.
Yes, Boa, before we move on to what Royal College has to look forward to in this coming week, we know that the Bradby attracts visitors from all across the world. And we have some exclusive footage with the New Zealand High Commissioner. So let's take a quick look at what he had to say to Quadrangle magazine.
The atmosphere is amazing, and to see the way these two teams are going at it, we've got two very well drilled, evenly matched teams playing with a lot of spirit and a lot of flair, and with a good sense of sportsmanship. So it's just wonderful to watch. Look, I think we can make more out of the game in our relationship between the two countries. I think the opportunity to collaborate more is there for the taking, and our both the New Zealand Rugby and our International Rugby Academy of New Zealand are well aware of the level of interest in rugby up here, and I think you're going to start seeing them come up quite regularly.
Lovely. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay.
Bye.
Was the High Commissioner of New Zealand, who came down to Sri Lanka to watch the all-important Bradby encounter between Trinity College and Royal College. Now, Boa, Royal College, in a hypothetical world, if you were in Dushantha 𝐊𝐿𝐴's place, what would you focus on these 2 weeks, this past week and this coming week?
Yeah, like I said, focus on your strengths. If I was coaching Royal, which I'm not, by the way, and it's probably one of the most stressful jobs in Sri Lanka at the moment, because the expectations are so high, and every time these boys run out, they expect this team to win, and win probably by 150 points. So we all know that doesn't happen, but that's the expectation. In my view, what Royal need to do is play on top. So what that means is play what's in front. Don't try to do anything funky by shifting the ball out wide in just hands. Pick and go, be abrasive, look to put phase after phase after phase, and play in pairs. Play in pairs. So just outside the fringe of the ruck, as someone picks, always have a support carrier on the shoulder. It just means that you can pop offloads. Once you get those offloads, you will bust the gain line. Once you bust the gain line, then play what's in front. Yeah. I think that's the easiest way Royal can get on top. Once they get on top, they will have penalties and then go back to what I said, which is take the points. You know? Now, in tight games, you've got to be prepared to, bust your gut for, in this instance, 70, 71 minutes, So it really comes down to consistency on how you apply your game plan and how you, you've got to be very disciplined. One thing I noticed in the first leg was Royal have put a significant amount of effort into managing their tackle height. There was no silly high shots or anything like that. They were going nice and low. That was really good. But unfortunately, they were a little bit clumsy around, retreating behind the offside line, hands in the ruck, things like that. So don't give, really work on your discipline. Don't give anything away. Look to hang on to the ball as much as you can. Create pressure. And once you have that pressure, convert that pressure into scoreboard pressure. So what I'm saying is not rocket science, okay? It's just really simple. But of course, the way things have kind of flourished or floundered, depending on which side of the coin you want to subscribe to, Royal have found it a little bit difficult to get that consistency, which is what's surprising, because this is, in my view, it's a talented side. Yeah. But they just haven't been as good as they're supposed to. And I know in some quarters, there's a lot of criticism that, this side is overrated and they are better than what they actually are. I really don't want to get into any of that, because at the end of the day, this is schoolboy rugby. And this is a very good side. They're very, very capable of beating Trinity, handsomely, by the way, at the Lions Den. But to do that, they have to go back to their strengths. At the moment, they're just a little bit lost in transit. So hopefully this last couple of weeks, they've addressed that. And if I was a coach, that's what I'd be doing. I'd be keeping really, really simple 2 or 3 paces of really easy detail for the players to get it up here. And then on game day, just bring, it's what I call a hurt locker. Bring the pain. Every collision, every tackle, every big hit, Trinity, they've got to feel it, right? And after 70 minutes, Trinity will feel like they've been in a war. They'll be feeling it. They'll be feeling like they've been in a war. And if they can do that, if Royal can do that, they'll be taming the Lions. Trust me on that.
I think that is how we should end today's show, because rugby is definitely a war. But before I let you go, Boa, I think the question on all our minds. You've been 1 for 1 already. Who do you think is going to get across the board? Who do you think is going to finish the race? Will it be Royal College 6 straight years in a row and defeating and beating legacy, the history, the 1952 to 1957 Trinity side had? They held the longest streak, but if they win this year, Royal will have successfully held the shield for 6 continuous years. Or will it be Trinity College Kandy? They are high-spirited. They go into the match with a 1-point lead, not much, but they do have something to keep on their backs. Who do you think is going to be, Royal or Trinity?
Okay, so not many teams have come back from a loss in Bradby Shield series. I was part of 2 teams who came back from first leg defeats. In one of the series back in 1997, we won, but we weren't quite successful and we lost the shield by 1 point. One of the greatest games, one of the greatest second legs ever in the history of Bradby Shield. I can still remember it like yesterday. Okay. And then back in 1998, we were red hot favorites, very special side. I was very lucky to be involved in that. We, broke record after record. We were red hot favorites, and the first leg at Sugata Stadium, we lost 20 points to 18. We scored 3 tries to Trinity's 1, by the way. So there you go, kicking goals. Trinity A man called Prasanna Jayawardena, amazing athlete out on the wing. He captained that side. Trinity upset the apple cart. We were stunned. But in the second leg, we came back at Bogamburra and won 42 points to 11. Set a record, and that record got smashed quite easily, I think, a few years later. So, special game, special people. It's going to take special moments. Like the last few weeks, I'm going to go with two equations, most likely and the long shot. So I think under the current circumstances, current form line, you have to back Trinity to win the second leg and eventually to go on to win the 78th Bradby Shield. So the most likely scenario, my most likely prediction is that Trinity to win the second leg by 3 points or lesser. And they will do so in a very, very dramatic manner. That's how I see this thing happening. 3 points or less. So that's the most likely scenario. However, the other side of the coin is, if Royal do everything I talked about today, then we will see Royal winning by 9 points or lesser. Okay, and if they do that, well, guess what? The Shield's coming back to Colombo at Jurassic Park, and Trinity's dream will not eventuate. But in my view, the most likely scenario, Trinity to win by 3 points or lesser. That means 4 points, so they'll take the Shield. And I have a sneaky little suspicion. That this will come down to a last play penalty. Everyone will hold their breath, and someone will get a chance to be a hero. So who knows? I have an uncanny way of these things sort of coming right. But that's how I see it. So let's see how the cookie crumbles, eh?
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from the man, the statspert Boa Athu himself. Two scenarios, which one will unravel on the 7th of September at the Lions Park, at the Lions Den in 𝐊𝐿𝐴. Make sure you grab your tickets, you grab your friends, and you grab your popcorn, because 7th of September is going to be one cracker of a way to end this two-part series. So make sure you join us at 𝐊𝐿𝐴, and we will see who will retain or win back all important 78th Bradby Shield. For today's show, thank you for being with us, Bo, and we'll see you hopefully next week after the Bradby. It's either going to be your school or it's going to be mine and Basa's school. We'll see how it goes. Thank you for being with us, Bo. Pleasure to have you. Good night, ladies and gentlemen.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Hey, have you heard about Z?
We KYC.
Easy.
Mobile banking.
Crazy.
Education loans and salary advances.
Amazing. Introducing the Digital Youth Account. NDBZ from NDB Bank. The future is banking on us.
Creamy richness redefined. Smooth, soft, spreadable. Introducing Ultra Soft 𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐴 with canola and sunflower oil.
We search the world for the finest things for you. Things like sun-kissed European berries, rich chocolate from the world's best cocoa fields, and crisp cashews and fluffy marshmallows in a quirky Australian recipe.
𝐊𝐿𝐴𝐴, experience the world.
හැමදේම අතළඟ තියෙද්දි දුක් විඳින්නේ ඇයි?
Body roll.